This is what you probably picture when you think of training mobility and flexibility. Holding a really painful posture for 30 to 60 grueling and boring seconds. There are other methods, of course. There's PNF stretching, which involves contracting the muscles at the same time as holding the position. There's weighted stretching, where you're going to get into that range of motion whilst holding a weight. But they all kind of suck, they all kind of hurt. Is it any wonder that people aren't training their mobility as much as they probably should be? Like I say, a big problem with this right away is that it's boring and uncomfortable. If you're someone who doesn't find mobility or flexibility particularly interesting, then motivating yourself to do this, and you've got to do it for all the different body parts and positions on top of your regular training, is gonna be tricky. Fortunately, I've found what I think is a better way, which is just as well because I'm feeling so sick today. As we're going to see, I think that using my method that's a lot gentler is not only something you're much more likely to stick with, but it's also something that gets faster results, or at least it has done for me. I call it the liquid motion system, and of course I'm going to share it with you in this video. So let's use the example of a deep squat. So normally if you're trying to train your squat mobility, which is something that I highly recommend a lot of people do, then what you might do is try and force yourself into as deep a squat as possible. If you are lacking mobility in this area, you might get down deep into that squat and you might really struggle to make sure your heels are on the floor, your back might be curled over and you're trying to straighten it out, but you're all tense, it's painful and you're holding this position. You might even hold onto a weight in order to push yourself further down. You might pull on something to pull yourself down. You might splay your legs apart and then you're going to hold that position for 30 to 60 seconds. It's very uncomfortable. And there is a risk here of injury as well because, you know, if you are curling your back an awful lot, if your ankles don't have that mobility, you're just not in a very natural, comfortable position. Of course, I'm not saying this doesn't work. It's worked for people for, you know, tens of hundreds of years, and you're not supposed to go so far that you're all crippled over, but for most of us, stretching equals some form of discomfort. What I'm recommending instead is that you start standing up. Slowly lower yourself into the squat and find the point where you start to feel a little bit less comfortable. Maybe it's here, maybe it's a bit higher up. And then you're just going to gently move up and down in that position maybe. Try standing back up, try lowering back down, see if you can get a little bit lower. Maybe try moving your weight from side to side. Move around like this. Tilt your feet forwards, tilt them backwards. Undulate. Undulate. We're not going to worry too much if our heel's off the floor slightly. In fact, if your weight is very slightly on the balls of your feet and your heels are raising just slightly, that is going to provide the pressure to give you that extra ankle range of motion over time. And you're just going to do it like that and just experiment, undulate, only where it's comfortable, just right at the boundary of what you can do. And it's all controlled, it's all strength, not just mobility, and it's comfortable. Do that a little bit, stand up, do it again. And you can still just do it for about a minute, then carry on with your day. And of course the same principle can be applied to really any kind of movement pattern like this. I do it with doorway shoulder openers, so instead of pushing and pulling myself as far as I can, I'm instead just moving forwards and backwards, left to right, rolling it around in the socket there. At the same time, I do it with wall bridges, I do it with pigeon pose and deep split squats. I do it with single-legged bodyweight good mornings and Cossack squats. Again, instead of putting the pressure on myself in a Cossack squat to get nice and deep and keep my heel on the floor, I just see what I can do and I move around in that position. And it's done wonders. My mobility has increased in all these areas drastically, far more quickly than it had done using any of the other methods I've used previously. In particular, I've noticed that my back bridge has gone from being this bent-armed, straight, stiff-backed mess, one that I was actually too embarrassed to show in a recent video, to one that is still not great, but it looks a lot better, a lot more like a back bridge is supposed to look. And this is in the space of a few weeks of training like this. So why is it that this system might have worked so well for me? What is it about gentle movement and exploring a region that is more effective at improving mobility than just getting into a position? So for starters, just like some of the other most effective forms of stretching, just like PNF stretching, just like weighted stretching, you're not just passively stretching here, you're actively stretching, meaning that it involves strength and control. Because you're staying in an area that's comfortable for you, that you can control, and then you're actively moving throughout there, kind of demonstrating that control, you're helping to relax your nervous system, because a lot of our struggles with mobility and flexibility come from the fact that our body is unused to those positions. It's not that there's any physical tissue that we're trying to remold. It's not that we have tendons connecting our legs so we can't get them apart. Rather, we need to relax our bodies to remind ourselves that this is a natural and safe range of motion. If you never get into that position, your body learns not to get into that position, and therefore when you start to approach that end range, then you seize up, your muscle contracts to protect you, you get muscle guarding, and it makes it impossible for you to go any further. And this is why forcing yourself and pushing yourself into those uncomfortable positions can actually be counterproductive, because you're actually creating more stress and causing your body to seize up more. By gently and easily moving to that area, and by just spending time exploring there, you're just getting used to that position. At the same time, because you're engaging your muscles, because you're actually moving in this area, you're also building strength and control down here. So for many of us, for example, getting into a deep squat is just part of the story. Being able to hold yourself just above that deepest position and move up and down is actually quite hard. Even if you've got a very big back squat and you can move a lot of weight, you might find that just holding that position and moving up and down is very difficult. This is why you get that as a sticking point. You usually use momentum to push yourself up and past that position. But if you practice being there and holding that position, then you're gaining the control. You're controlling the primary muscles, but also the antagonists, to decide exactly where you want to be and how you want to control your position. And again, this overrides any kind of defense mechanism, allowing you to get into that position more easily, and it also gives you the strength and control in that position to avoid injury. And this will even translate to a bigger squat, because you're getting rid of that sticking point. Now you actually do have control in that slightly lesser used position. This is a bit like quasi-isometrics, which are a form of isometrics where you perform an exercise extremely slowly, such that a push-up or one-armed push-up might take an entire minute to complete. By doing this, you learn to exert the exact amount of force you need to get into that position, and to hold that position, and to control it. The kind of power you get from this I call strength finesse. And if you can finesse yourself through these positions, then you have total control, total mastery over that end range of motion. And you're doing it all in a way that's far more relaxing and comfortable and easier to convince yourself to do when you're feeling a bit under the weather, a bit tired, or just don't fancy it because it's normally boring. Yes, thank you. On top of all that, going slow and moving around here gives you that immediate sensory feedback, so you can feel whether you're in the right position, you can feel what's tight, what hurts, you can make sure that your back's straight, you can make sure that you're not rounding your lower back where you shouldn't be. This kind of feedback then builds proprioception, mind-muscle connection, allowing you to know and control exactly where your body is in space. This is something that's really important, to really think about and focus on which muscles you're stretching to improve that mobility. This is something I struggled with for a long time, and using this method would have really sped up my gains in that regard. So for example, when you're stretching using a cobra stretch, or a Hindu push-up, or even a back bridge, you're actually trying to stretch the abdominals, the front of the body. You think of yourself as trying to stretch your back because you're improving back mobility, but this is not a very helpful cue, because it's not what you're actually trying to stretch. You're actually trying to stretch the front so that you can move into the back more easily. You're trying to stretch the antagonist muscles. Being in these positions and moving around there allows you to feel that immediate feedback, that mind-muscle connection, to ensure you're actually stretching the right thing and getting the desired results. The other piece of the puzzle, the other key aspect of this, is that you're not just going to do one long mobility or flexibility session at the start of your day or at the end of a workout. Instead, you're going to break this up and do it throughout your day. You're going to be constantly, gently moving in these positions. So for example, in the morning, like I say, I like to get into that deep squat position, just move around there. But then I might do the same thing later on in the kitchen whilst I'm making a cup of tea, or I might do it whilst I'm taking a break from work and sitting at the computer, and I might do it in the evening, in the shower, when I'm nice and warm and therefore more limber. Likewise with these other stretches, I don't usually do them at the same time as I do the squats. I might do 2 or 3 together, but I'm not doing them all in one big block. So being able to do these things throughout the day has tons of benefits. For one, it's much less daunting not having this big list of uncomfortable and boring stretches you need to do. You're just going to do a couple. If you're going to do this though, and if you're going to be mobile throughout the day, then you need to wear clothes that will allow you to do that. That's why I always wear jeans that are flexible and let me get into a deep squat, and it's why I always wear Vivo Barefoots. Vivo Barefoot are today's sponsors and the makers of some of the best minimalist shoes in the world, in my opinion. Just got this new pair and I think they look awesome in this colour. So the idea of a minimal shoe is that it mimics the way that you move when you're not wearing a shoe at all. So that means a wider toe box, allowing your feet, your toes, to splay inside the shoe so they don't get all cramped. Gives you a wider base of support so you're less likely to fall over. It also means a thinner sole so you can feel the ground underneath you, giving you greater proprioception and once again more balance and control. For example, I just simply wouldn't want to do that move if I wasn't wearing my Vivos, for real. And it means minimal to a zero heel to toe drop. That means that your heels aren't elevated as they are in most shoes. Without your heels being elevated, you can actually get into a deep squat and have that full stretch on your ankles. You're not kind of cheating the movement. It's windy. If you're interested in trying a pair of Vivos for yourself, then head over to the link in the description down below and use code BIONEER at checkout. You'll get 15% off your first order. Thanks once again to Vivo Barefoot for sponsoring this video, and now on with the show. At the same time, it just means you're being much more active and dynamic throughout the day. This is really important because it's sitting in one position or not moving much throughout the day that often means we end up stiff and immobile, and it's what leads to injury when we then jump into exercise or some kind of awkward movement. By doing some of these first thing in the morning and then throughout the day constantly, I'm not getting into that position where I'm stiff and awkward, when I've lost the kind of mind-muscle connection. I'm able to move more healthily. Also increases blood flow, it increases energy, so I feel more energetic throughout the day as well. Of course, this is much more similar to the way that we might have trained in the wild or maintained our fitness in the wild. By constantly moving throughout the day and exploring different ranges of motion, we just maintained the mobility we needed. And we didn't stand for ages in deep lunges and hold them for time when we were, hunter-gatherers. At least I don't think we did. So this, to me, makes a lot more sense, and I think it's probably healthier as well. Anyways guys, let me know what you think. Is this a system that you're likely to experiment with? Is it something you've used in the past? Is it similar to something you've used in the past? It'll give you strength in positions that most people are weak, and I just think it's a fantastic tool that, I'm really glad I've discovered, and I'd love to hear your feedback on it if you start experimenting with it as well. I am thinking of formalizing this into a program called the Liquid Motion System, of course, and I'm debating whether to sell that from the site or whether to give it away as a freebie to Patreon. So let me know if that's something you'd be interested in the description down below. And if so, then I'll create a list of different exercises and a bit more of a tutorial on how to use this method in all those different positions. If you'd like to support the channel, then please consider becoming a patron. There's a link to my Patreon down below, and members get access to all sorts of stuff depending on the tier. You get access to early videos, ad-free. There's some exclusive videos on there. There's a bunch of different apps. You can access my current workout regime, my current program that I'm following. That'll be updated as I change it and it develops over time. There's a full guide to eating and body recomposition that includes some of my favorite recipes. So yeah, there's tons over there. And of course, there's a Discord server for the highest tier where we can chat about this stuff in more depth. Either way, guys, thank you so much for watching this one. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.